In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you the exact tips and strategies so you can master your ITTOs and pass your CAPM exam on your first try. Hey everyone, now before we start, let me welcome you to my channel. My name is Alvin and I'm an engineer turned project manager. I passed my own CAPM exam in 2020 with above target in all domains, and I'm looking to pass the new PMP exam in 2021. So on this channel, I'm here to share with you the best tips and strategies that I'm using so you can pass your CAPM and PMP exam on your first try. So if you're new here to the channel and you want the best strategies to pass your exam and become certified in project management, then hit that subscribe button along with the bell icon so you don't miss out on any of my future upcoming videos. Also remember that at any point throughout this video, you can find additional links and information in the description down below. Now before we get started, if you're interested in accessing more than 100 free CAPM exam and PMP exam practice questions that walks you step by step through each of the critical areas on your exam, you can go on over to alvinthepm.com/ebook and download it for free. So on the PMP and CAPM exam, per the 6th edition of the PMBOK guide, there are a total of 10 knowledge areas, 5 process groups, and 49 processes that we follow when we're leading and managing a project. Now it can feel very overwhelming having to understand what each process is. And the number one question that I'm always asked is, do I have to memorize each and every one of the ITTOs? And the answer is simple. It's no. From my experience studying for and passing my own CAPM exam, if you can master the purpose behind each process and what each is trying to achieve, then you'll be able to figure out the correct answers to any exam questions which covers each process group. And just to make sure you don't forget, I'll be repeating this theme throughout this video. Tip number 1, understand the purpose for each process. When you're studying each of these process groups, always ask yourself, why is this process group important and how is it used when I'm managing my project? Each process is made up of 3 things: an input, tool or technique, and an output. And these ITTOs are what you would call your recipes. So for example, let's say your process was to bake chocolate chip cookies. Your input would be everything you need in order to create your cookies. So that would be the flour, butter, sugar, eggs, and chocolate chips. Your tools would be everything that you're using to create the cookies, and this would include a KitchenAid mixer, a spatula, baking sheet, and a measuring cup. And then of course, your output is the resulting product from your process, which in this case would be your chocolate chip cookies. So from the PMBOK guide, let's take for example the process group of creating a WBS. So you might ask yourself, what is the purpose of creating a WBS? Well, in this process, you're creating a work breakdown structure and dividing your project deliverables into the work that your team will perform. Okay, so you have that figured out. But what do we need in order to create the WBS? In this case, you'll need your scope management plan because that outlines how you'll manage the project scope throughout your project's lifecycle, as well as the project scope statement and requirements documentation. Alright, so that makes sense. But how do we create the WBS? Well, one of the key tools you would use is decomposition, which helps break down the project's work into smaller activities. So in this example, we've broken down the process of creating a WBS and asked ourselves these 3 key questions to understand why the process is important and how it fits into the bigger picture of project management. So anytime you're going through this, ask yourself these 3 questions as you study all 49 ITTOs. Focus on understanding what is this and why is it important. So if you can apply this strategy while you're studying the different processes, you'll be able to master this very easily. And as a friendly reminder, I post all of my exam strategies and study notes that I've used to pass my own CAPM exam as well as for the upcoming PMP exam. So if you go on over to my website, alvinthepm.com, I've created a page that outlines the purpose and background for each process group, along with some of the key tips that helped me out when I was studying. So make sure you check out the link down below where I break down each process group and why they're important. This will be super valuable to reference when you're preparing for your CAPM exam. so feel free to bookmark this page throughout your exam prep journey. Now on to our next tip. Tip number 2, do not memorize the ITTOs. As I mentioned in my previous video, for how to pass the CAPM exam on your first try, this is a complete waste of your time. Do not memorize your ITTOs. Let me repeat that. Do not memorize your ITTOs. There are a total of 49 process groups, and spending countless hours memorizing each ITTO, it's not worth your time. Instead, focus on understanding what the key outputs are for each process and what tools are unique to each process group. So if you're able to identify whether an item is an input or if it's an output, that will give you a tremendous advantage when you're using process of elimination and identifying the correct answer on the day of your exam. Now for our next tip. Tip number 3, create flashcards of any ITTOs that you have a hard time remembering. I know it sounds so basic and elementary, but I'm telling you, they work. Take my word for it. Flashcards were my best friend when I was studying for my CAPM exam. They're so simple, but yet so effective. And my philosophy is to always keep it simple, and using flashcards has been the best way for me to remember the key concepts for each of the 49 processes. So to keep it simple, what I recommend is that on the front of the flashcard, you write down the process name and its associated PMP chapter number. And on the back of the flashcard, you write down 2 things. The process group that it's in, so for example, initiation, planning, monitoring and controlling, or closing. And lastly, the reason why it's important. So for example, let's take the process of managing the team. On the front of the flashcard, I would write 9.5 manage team. And on the back of the flashcard, I would write execution. And in my own words, I would write down the reason why it's important. Tracking the team's performance, providing feedback, and helping resolve issues. So with these flashcards, you can easily test yourself by asking yourself, during what process group does this occur? Is it initiation, planning, monitoring and controlling, or closing? Why is it important? And in what order does it occur? So for example, manage team occurs after develop team. Now of course, this is what worked for me, so feel free to modify this strategy and go much more deeper when you're studying. Now here's the 4th tip. Master the ITTO trends and patterns. The ITTOs tend to repeat themselves, so understand what these key patterns are and use this to your advantage. The first pattern is to notice the verbs that are used in the titles of each process group. Depending upon what verbs are used in the title of the process group will tell you what stage the process is in, whether it's planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. So for example, planning process groups typically include plan, estimate, and define verbs in their title. Executing process groups, on the other hand, include verbs which imply action, such as direct, manage, and implement. Monitoring and controlling process groups include the words monitor, control, and validate. And lastly, closing uses the word close. Pattern number 2. All of the estimation processes use estimation techniques to create 2 key outputs, the basis of estimate and the corresponding estimate type. So for example, a duration estimate or a cost estimate. Now keep in mind that this applies to the following estimation processes: estimate activity durations, estimate costs, and estimate activity resources. And by the way, if you're getting a lot of value out of this video, and if you'd like to see more videos to help you pass your CAPM and PMP exam on your first try, be sure to hit subscribe along with that bell icon and smash that like button. Learn from my journey so you don't make the same mistakes as me. On to our next pattern. Pattern number 3. Make sure you understand the flow of deliverables and how these become verified, validated, and accepted, and ultimately form the final product. The project deliverables are first created while you're directing and managing the project's work. These deliverables are then verified as a result of control quality, and afterwards, the verified deliverables become validated by the customer during validation of the scope and become formalized into accepted deliverables. And lastly, it's only until the closing stage of the project that these accepted deliverables are delivered to the customer as the final product. So as a quick recap, make sure you thoroughly understand this flowchart for how deliverables ultimately become translated into the final product. For our next pattern, master the process flow of work performance data and how it becomes translated into work performance information. And lastly, work performance reports. So first and foremost, work performance data is an output of directing and managing your team's work. This data feeds into all monitoring and controlling process groups except those associated with integration management to produce information for monitoring and tracking your project status and health condition. This information is ultimately used to create work performance reports while you're monitoring and controlling your project's work. These work performance reports are then inputs into perform integrated change control, manage team, manage communications, and monitor risks. For our next pattern, be sure you understand the flow of how change requests are created and approved. Change requests are created from all of the processes shown on this slide. Pause this video and make sure you can recognize what some of these key patterns are. From here, you can see that all monitoring and controlling processes, except for perform integrated change control, produce change requests. These change requests are inputs into performing integrated change control, are reviewed by the change control board, and ultimately become approved change requests. The approved change requests then become an input into 3 processes: control quality, control procurement, and direct and manage project work. And for our last pattern, here is a list of other common patterns for ITTOs that you should also be familiar with. Now, we won't be going too much into detail for these patterns, so pause the video right now so you can read through this and make sure you understand what each of these patterns mean. And last but not least, tip number 5. Practice every day. Now, I took notes of the ITTOs in my notebook, and every single day I will glance through it a couple of times just to make sure that it was fresh in my mind. Every day, I would review a minimum of at least 1 to 2 process groups every single day. And so I encourage you to do the same thing so that you can master each of the 49 different processes. So here's a recap of our 5 tips. Understand the purpose behind each process. Do not spend the time to memorize the details for each ITTO. Create flashcards for the concepts you're having a hard time grasping. Master the common patterns and trends. And lastly, practice every single day. And just as a reminder, if you haven't done so already, go on over to alvinthepm.com/ebook to grab a copy of your free practice workbook covering more than 100 practice questions containing the critical areas to help you pass your CAPM and PMP exam on your first try. So thanks again so much for watching today's video. If you found a lot of value out of this video, and if you'd like to see more weekly quizzes and tutorials to help you pass your CAPM and PMP exam, be sure to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss out on any of my future videos just like this one. Smash that like button and share this with a friend. Help me get the word out about this channel so we can help others also become certified in project management. Until next time, I'm Alvin, helping you become a certified project manager, and I'll see you in next week's video.